I forgot to introduce Jeff before he came up because he's been here every year, and so I just wanted to, for the newbies in the room, you know, Administrator Dominguez is a political appointee. She was appointed by President Obama and had to get confirmed by the Senate. Jeff is a career person. I almost said bureaucrat, but that wouldn't have been appropriate. And he's been working on this for years, and he's really the long-term head of the Office of Pipeline Safety. So he does the day-to-day Office of Pipeline Safety stuff. So that's the, and he's got some god-awful title that I always mess up, the Associate Administrator of something or another. But he's willing to take questions. So if there's questions for Jeff, either from the webcast audience or from here, this is your time to ask the head of the Office of Pipeline Safety.
Good morning, Jeff. Jonathan Perez from EDF.
I think we know you, Jonathan.
Yes, you do. I wanted to ask a question about unregulated gathering systems, the 90% or so that are outside of high consequence areas, and the paradox that we're in as it relates to getting the data to make cost effectiveness determinations. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how we can overcome that paradox whereby you don't have sufficient data about the system to make a good cost effectiveness determination.
Well, yes. Which ones do I have that keep Jeff out of hot water? Okay, let's see. How about this one? You know, this is disproportionately spread. The energy kind of renaissance in the country is disproportionately spread around the country, and that issue, Jonathan, as you know, is also disproportionately spread around the country. PHMSA has been committed to trying to regulate risky gas gathering in particular and risky liquid gathering for a long time. The cost-benefit provisions and the Administrative Procedures Act provisions that we go through would not allow us just to go out and say, well, we think that should be regulated, so we'll do it, and here's what you have to do. If we could do that, it would have been done by now, Jonathan. So the thing is, the states have a lot of authority that we don't have, and it's more concentrated in certain places. So one of my thoughts are, we're committed to pursuing risky gathering. There's no doubt about that, and I know the administrator has supported us on that, and she's fighting for it now, you know, and I think we're hopeful we'll move something by the end of this year. We remain eternally optimistic. But that being said, we can only go after risky. I know that you, Jonathan, and your colleagues, and Mark and others who we work with regularly, you know, want the other part too, and I think you're probably right to do so. You know, but that's probably going to have to be done at a state level. You know, I'm just saying the feds can only regulate so far, and then the states are going to have to take over in that case. But I would say there's a lot of work. By the way, we environmental defense, we haven't met yet, but we do work a lot with your folks. And I know Mark is not here, is he? No, he's not. Okay. We work with Jonathan and Mark quite a bit. So I think it's been a good collaboration, good partnership. I really enjoyed it. They've done some really smart work, the Environmental Defense Fund, if you haven't seen it, on measuring, monitoring methane emissions. It's really eye-opening. You know, I think you really should be thinking about these kinds of issues, but Jonathan, some of them are really out of our sphere of influence. We'll influence the ones that we think we can go after, which more along the lines of like your super emitters, what you were talking about. I think that's an easier target for feds.
Hi, Jeff. Linda Farrell, Pipeline Safety Coalition. So in regard to the gathering line situation in Pennsylvania, you know very well that we've got the Class 1 gathering line concerns in which many of those Class 1 gathering lines are the size and MAOP of transmission lines. And Pipeline Safety Coalition was also is a member of the Pipeline Infrastructure Task Force that the governor has initiated. One of the dilemmas that we have is that in working through this task force, one hand is saying the state has higher authority, and the other hand is saying the federal government has higher authority. So the PUC or the state is saying, well, let's wait and see what PHMSA does, and PHMSA is saying, but the state has a better chance of getting these lines regulated. So where do we go from there?
Well, as you know, besides you, Linda, who I've known for a long time, you know, I know a number of the people on that task force, Paul Metro, Bill Kiger, and others, and I've volunteered to come up there. So if they want to ask me that question directly, I'm happy to answer it. you know, and I'll answer it.
Can I make that happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Just as we have answered it here, you know, the sphere of influence of the federal government on those issues is limited to that, where I think our rules and our principles, as we've laid them down and talked to you about it, we think if people are at risk, put at risk by these operations, they should be protected. You know, it's really, that's the bottom line. And I think actually a lot of the industry has made commitments along those lines. So I think you'll see the combination of the federal and the industry commitments working that issue, but there's going to be some. By the way, as you know, Linda, in Pennsylvania in particular, a lot of that gathering is not the large diameter. The stuff that Jonathan and others are working about, it's smaller gas gathering that you could actually put your hand over the end of that pipeline and stop it. You know, but on a daily basis, it's leaking. You know, so those are significant issues. They have to be taken up, and I think it's going to take both of us working together along with the industry cooperation to push that envelope. But PHMSA has offered to come up and participate with the Pennsylvania Task Force happily. Sure.
We've got one over here, and I'll just chime in that the state of Ohio actually has passed regulations on road gathering lines, so there's one state model that other states could look at.
Good morning, Jeff.
Morning.
My name is Richard Smith. I'm with Friends of the Headwaters. We are a little activist group in Minnesota that's being a thorn in Enbridge's side right now. Yeah. One of the issues that we've been contesting is an environmental impact statement for any new or rebuilding pipeline project. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering why there isn't just a national standard for a full EPA-driven comprehensive environmental impact statement for any kind of pipeline, hazardous materials pipeline, because most of these are interstate systems anyway. Mm-hmm. And the company, what we're contesting is the company wants to go with lower state regulations than what we think should be applied in this instance. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I think that's a fair and good one, you know, and you would think it would have a clean answer, but it doesn't. You know, for reasons that are beyond me, you have to look at, for the people who are new in the pipeline field, look at the statutory authority of the agency that you're talking about. Our authorities are prescribed by the U.S. Congress. These are the bounds that we operate in. For reasons that predate me by a long time, there are rules about siting interstate natural gas pipelines, and you'll have she used to be chairman, Commissioner Colette Honorable, who'll be here tomorrow, by the way, is my favorite commissioner. She's actually very responsive, very open, willing to talk to you about these things. Interstate natural gas, there are siting at a federal level that's done. For reasons that escape me on interstate liquids, it's done state by state. That came up a couple of years ago. Carl, you were probably involved in that debate about should there be a federal agency in charge of siting those things, and it just died, you know. So it's outside of our swim lanes. This is not giving you the answer you want, but it's outside of our swim lanes, and the agency goes to a lot of these meetings, including some of the ones that you're talking about, and tries to answer safety questions, but that's our role in the siting. And I think I talked to a couple of your colleagues the other night, and what I said is by the time PHMSA shows up, people are already mad, you know. We had nothing to do with where that pipeline was going, but people are mad by the time we get there. So it's a fair question. I'm sorry I can't answer it better than that.